newspapers. You are a white 40-something man.
That's true. I can't do that.
So what makes you different from the Miliband's and Ed Balls and the others who joined the race so far?
Well, we are all good friends and they're all great talents, but my background is different, and as people can probably hear, I come from a different part of the country, and I hope that my ordinary upbringing means that people might be able to relate to me. Also, though, that I have got an ability to connect with the people that Labour needs to win back, and obviously coming out of the election, that's the party's top priority.
Everybody seems to have gone back over the campaign and talked about the failure of the Labour Party to listen to its core voters and so on. Do you agree with that? And if you do, what in concrete policy terms is the solution?
Well, I think Labour did great things during its 13 years in office, and I'm not standing to disown that record or to say that it was all wrong. It wasn't. We did things that improved my constituency greatly, but there was a perception that we weren't listening to people, particularly people who'd found life hard in recent months as the recession had bit. That sense that people doing the right thing, trying to get on in life, who perhaps always looked to Labour to give them a helping hand, I think they felt that Labour, when they looked round, wasn't on their side, and that was the message that I heard a lot around the country during the election. It wasn't that we'd fundamentally lost their trust. I think there was just a sense that Labour wasn't listening to them.
Do you think on immigration you had the wrong policy?
I think our problem on immigration, and it was, for me anyway, clearly the biggest issue at the election, was the sense that we weren't talking about it. So that some people felt we were either in denial or just didn't want to talk about it. Because I know that there are some parts of the country that have changed very rapidly. It's not whole communities, but often small parts of communities have changed rapidly, and that has changed people's lives in those communities. So, you know, Labour has to be in there, Andrew, talking to those people. Otherwise, we leave a vacuum, and those with more sinister intentions come in and obviously whip up fear and hatred.
Well, see, I don't quite understand this business about we must talk about it more, because the question is, would the policy be different? Should the policy have been different? Was there a policy problem, or was it simply that you didn't use the right words?
I mean, partly a problem of perception. Labour had taken steps to toughen the immigration system. And as I pointed out many times on relation to European migration, there was a time in this country where British people travelled Europe to get jobs. My own dad worked in Germany and Ireland in the 1990s, so we had benefited from free movement.
Pretty much.
There was a perception problem, I think, but it's not just the question of immigration, it's access to housing. It's the effect on wages and jobs. So it's not that people didn't welcome new arrivals, it's just that it could make life tougher in certain parts of the country. And it was not talking enough and showing that we understood that I think became a problem for us at the election.
Was Gordon Brown a problem on the doorstep?
Well, people mentioned that, you know, that they weren't inspired by Gordon. Actually, I felt he performed well in the leadership debates. And actually, I've got huge personal affection and admiration for Gordon. I think he in his time in office as Prime Minister, it was the challenges he faced and stood up to were unbelievable.
And you don't agree with the critics of the Iraq War either? You stick by that decision?
Well, I was in Parliament at the time and I voted for the war. I can say, I mean, I've been over and over it in my mind many times since, because obviously it was a huge decision and people still have very, very strong views about it. I, with hindsight, could look back and say, well, maybe that could have been done differently and that wasn't quite right. But I don't back away from the original decision. I think it gave 20 or so million people in Iraq hope of a better life, and you just cannot walk away from that truth, and that's so important to say.
You sound to me like the continuity candidate.
I'm quite proud to be. As I say, I think Labour did really good things, and at the beginning of New Labour, we said things that connected with the public, that we would be tough on crime, that we would be pro-business, and that we would really support those who want to get on in life. And Labour mustn't walk away from some of those really important messages that we made. I think at times we lost our way. In relation to wealth at times, it looked like we had no view on very excessive wealth. And I don't think the Labour Party could ever be in that position where we just had no view about wealth at the very highest levels. But nevertheless, let's not walk away from those founding principles of New Labour.
So you would not, if you were the Labour Party leader, take the Labour Party in opposition more to the left?
Well, I would. I'm very much a Labour person through and through. And I would very much want
Labour
to build
rather than New Labour?
I would say it very clearly to you, Andrew, that my vision of Britain is a country where we have a fairer spread of health, wealth and life chances. Coming from the background that I do, I still have a strong sense that life chances aren't fairly distributed around this country, that kids from ordinary backgrounds still find it very, very hard indeed to break into the powerful worlds of the media, finance, law, politics even. That has been my experience through my life. I've always expected the tap on the shoulder to say, oh, well, this job isn't for the likes of you. And because of my experience in my life, it makes me more and more determined to open up opportunities to kids from ordinary backgrounds all around the country. And while Labour made progress on that issue, you know, there is much, much more to do.
And we've got 4 months of this now. You all know each other very well. You're all about the same age and so on. Is it going to turn nasty?
Oh, no, no, absolutely not. I mean, we've worked together as colleagues and as friends. And while we are different people with different backgrounds and different perspectives, I think actually we helped sustain the government by being good friends in government. And I'm fairly confident that that will carry on. Obviously, leadership elections in the Labour Party can always be a bit rough and tumble at times, and there'll doubtless be a little bit of that. But I will be friends and we'll keep it positive. And as I say, I hugely admire all of them.
All right, Andy Burnham for now. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
OK, the talks between British Airways and the Unite Union came to an abrupt and unexpected halt yesterday, as we saw, before protesters stormed the building where the meeting was being held. The two sides have been hard at it, struggling over principles and details. Among the sticking points seem to be travel perks, treatment of staff who took part in the last strike and many more. So, the question is, will they be able to return to the talks today? The stakes